morning. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. I love recording on Fridays.
I do too. I think the least stressed out usually on Friday.
Because the in the
Not
tunnel is there.
Yeah, exactly. It's not because I have less to do. I never actually have less to do. It's just that like the opportunity to relax and stop worrying about doing all of it is nigh. It's right around
Right
the
around
corner.
the corner. Exactly.
So, how are things going?
Things are going good. It's busy all the time. We have a little bit of warmth here, which is amazing. 45 degrees feels
Oh,
like
really?
summertime compared to what we've been having. So,
So we've actually been having like spring-like weather all week. It's been so gorgeous. It's been in the 70s.
nice.
It's amazing. Although, listen, so if y'all weren't aware, poor Brandy had a burst
I
pipe.
did.
Found out I had a burst pipe too.
You did?
Yes. Yes. But listen, it was like the best case scenario for something like that to happen. It was an exterior faucet, and we didn't know that it was busted because it only started leaking when we turned it on.
Okay.
And like, so my husband went to turn it on so he could wash the car. And because I don't know, I guess we're people who I don't
Wash their car by hand in the driveway on
who
Sunday
wash their
afternoons?
car by hand and yeah, like, which I don't think anyone actually does anymore. I feel like that somehow demonstrates that we are stuck in, like, 1993, at least, probably, um, but we do that sometimes. So he went to turn it on, and instead of the water coming out of the faucet, it started pouring out of the brick wall all around the faucet.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, so that seemed really bad, but then he turned it off and it
Uh-huh.
stopped, and there was no, like, continuous water stream coming from anywhere else, so and we checked the, the water meter at the street, so we could see nothing was
Mhm.
running, so we knew it wasn't a leak, but I guess somehow it just had this, like, very long the exterior faucet has, like, this very long pipe before the valve,
Mhm.
and it was in that part of the pipe that got busted, so we just got, like, crazy lucky, and they came and switched it out. It took them like 10 minutes.
Whoa,
It
that is
was we
amazing.
were the luckiest. Yeah, luckiest
We're
ever.
still down to 1 bathroom in my house, and
Are you
yeah,
really?
and
Oh,
I'm out of
man.
my office.
How
My office is still trash, so this has been a long time, but,
oh
we're
my
making
gosh.
progress. Insurance got approved, so now we just need to get some work done.
Yeah, do you have any idea how long it's gonna take?
I think it'll be faster now that everybody's pipes are not busting every other minute because we had below
Sure.
0 temperatures for, like, 7 days straight.
Yeah.
So everybody was having trouble, and ours wasn't bad enough. Like, we didn't have water frozen in our basement. We were able to cut it off and stuff. So, nobody was trying
Yeah,
to deal
that's
with
nice.
us because it wasn't that bad, but, it's still bothering our own selves. So now I think we should be able to get this rolling next week, I think.
Well, I hope so. I'll keep my fingers
Thank
crossed for
you.
you. Also, can I just say I'm so jealous that you have a basement.
Oh, well, see, you gotta
Like,
move north. You're too close to the water.
I no, it's not it's not that. The soil in most of Texas, but definitely in North Texas is just, like,
Mhm.
terrible. So there's a ton of foundation problems here, so you can't build a basement and without going to, like, extreme expense to reinforce the thing, so no one has basements, even though we have tornadoes.
Oh,
We
but
don't
you have
have
no
we don't have
basements.
basements.
So, you have storm
We have no
cellars?
yeah, no.
You're supposed to go in the most interior closet?
That's exactly right. You're supposed to go into the most interior, like, room in your house with no windows and just, like, cross your
You
fingers.
know,
That's the
to
plan.
to bring this all the way full circle, here, people who don't even use their basements, but have, like, a disability, I've worked with some who got a stair lift for the particular purpose of being able to get to the basement in the case of a tornado, because especially when you live in rural areas, they're just way more frequent, and they don't even use their basement for
Yeah.
real, but they literally invested in a stair lift just to make sure they could get down there safely.
Yeah, I mean, which seems honestly like a reasonable investment to make,
Yeah,
actually. I am so jealous of, like, the rest of the country or, like, a lot of the country that has these basements. It's like all this extra
it is.
space. You can actually go somewhere safe if there's a
Mhm.
tornado. Yeah, like, yeah, we hunker down. We have a couple spots, but not many because we have a lot of windows in our house, so literally the only room without any windows is the powder room downstairs.
Oh, yeah. So y'all had to pile in there.
I mean, it's getting harder and harder as, like, the kids are not tiny children anymore, and we have a Great Dane. So like getting getting two grown adults, two like half grown people, and a 100-pound dog in a powder room is not that easy.
No,
And it's hot.
it is hot.
No. Yeah.
Let's pray for
Okay.
no tornadoes.
Let's pray for no tornadoes. I mean, that's not going to happen because we live in Texas, and, they were here before climate change and they're really here
Yeah,
now. So fingers crossed that we'll pray for not being hit by any
there you go.
tornadoes. Yes, for anyone. Um,
What are we care labbing today?
we are care labbing. Okay, so one of the places that people always think about fall prevention obviously is in the bathroom,
Yes, yes,
right?
yes.
And we think about fall prevention in the bedroom, but one of the places that we don't talk about fall prevention a lot is the kitchen.
Yeah, we don't. That's a good point.
But the kitchen is a common place for people to fall. It's a place where we spend a ton of
Sure.
time. And especially like if you're responsible for your own meal preparation, you cannot avoid being in the
Right.
kitchen. So I thought we would hashtag Care Lab things like tips for fall prevention in the kitchen, like easy stuff that we can look at right now. And then for folks who might be remodeling, like what are some considerations that they can have in mind?
I got ideas. I got lots.
I thought you might.
You know what my
Shoot.
very first one is? People really like to have these kitchen mats and rugs by the sink.
That was my
Yeah,
first
and
one
by the
too.
fridge.
Yeah.
And I know that you can sometimes get water on the floor by the sink and you might spill something at the fridge. But the risk of having them, especially when they've been there a while and they don't stick to the floor very good, it's just so much greater than the risk of like having a little extra water on your floor. And so like
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to try to tell somebody to stop doing something without satisfying the reason why they're doing it in the first place. But like,
Yeah.
I don't think you should have rugs. And if you're gonna have something, if you must, this is not my recommendation. Okay, just take it for that. It's not my recommendation, but if you must, it needs to stay to the floor completely and not kick up at all, and have high contrast so that you see it easily. For example, in my own kitchen, we have like a cushioned mat in front of the sink because you
Mm-hmm.
stand there washing the dishes, right? It's okay
Mm-hmm.
because my floor is white and the thing is brown. So nobody ever just like accidentally hits it because it's raised up. And it's fully rubber underneath and it doesn't go anywhere. I literally have to bend down and peel it off to mop the floor. So, like, that's okay. It could still be a church hazard for some people. But if you really got to do something, you got to do something like that. And then also, if you just don't have the rug and you do spill some water, just get a Swiffer and mop it up. You don't have to get down there with your hands to wipe it out. That's also
Mm-hmm.
a fault risk. But just like use a dry mop. We should keep that around.
Yeah, that was gonna be my first thing too, is like the mats that people like to have in their
Mm-hmm.
kitchen. And actually, like growing up, there was always same thing. There was always a cushion mat in front of the sink because my mom would have a hard time just like standing on that hard surface for a long time. So she preferred to have the cushion
Mm-hmm.
there. I mean, same thing. If you have to have that, doing all of the things that Brandy just said, I'm not going to reiterate it again, are absolute like must. If you can tolerate living without it, you're probably going to be
Yeah.
safer not having that mat there. I think it also depends to a certain extent on like where you're at in your life, right? If you are someone who has a mobility problem, or maybe you have noticed that you or your spouse or your mom or your dad or whoever is like, you're not picking up your feet all the way, maybe those toes aren't
Mm-hmm.
clearing, then even the smallest little change in surface, even if it's very well secured, can be a tripping hazard for someone to catch a toe on
Absolutely.
if they're not adequately clearing their foot while they're walking. And of course, big proponent of like, go get therapy, get stronger, don't just accept, don't just accept that weakness is happening, or that there's a problem with walking. Like, don't just go ahead and accept those
Mm-hmm.
things, but we have to take into account the fact that like when we change the environment, when we make our environment safe, that has an immediate instantaneous
Yes.
effect to make us safer while we're waiting for the effects of an exercise program or a balance program or something like that to kick in as well, because that takes
Mm-hmm.
time. But if you remove that mat, you have immediately made yourself safer. And then I think the other thing, because yeah, you're right. The other reason that people have these mats is because there's you could get water on the
Mhm.
floor in the
Mhm.
kitchen. We're constantly spilling all manner of things on the floor in my kitchen because we're messy
Mhm.
people, and there are children involved, and there's a big slobbery dog that's walking around. So I definitely get it. Um, but thinking about if you are in the process of really rethinking how you can make your home safer and you're investing some effort, some elbow grease, or some money into that,
Mhm.
thinking about adding a like a treatment to your flooring surfaces that can increase the friction of them so that they're less
Mhm.
slippery. That's something that can be done depending on the surface. Or if you're like ripping floors out and remodeling entirely, thinking about making sure that you are installing a surface that's not just about the beauty
Mhm.
of it, but that is also a surface that has a lower risk of slipping on it. And they do make specific flooring materials that are built for that too. So those are always things to consider anytime that there's a risk of water. And you think about that in the bathroom and in, the kitchen as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. You wanna know my
Um,
number 2?
no.
Dang, I really wanted to say
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, obviously, obviously.
Okay, here's my number 2. This is the thing I see the most frequently. This is super specific, but I feel like there's a lot of it. So, when you're a short person who
Mm,
maybe has gotten shorter over the years, and you still put your things in the same places, which is in the cabinets above you, and then you stand on
mhm,
this littlest bittiest step stool, only 1 foot can go up each step. And then you go up there every time to get things you use every day. That puts you at so much
mhm,
risk, so much more frequently than if you don't do that. And you say, like, well, it's a step stool. No, no, no. Most people have step stools that are easily to tip over. If it's got 2 steps, it's definitely tip hazard.
mhm,
And why? Like let's just reconsider where we put things at. If you I understand that like not all parts of your kitchen storage are accessible, right? Like we're a tall family, we put stuff in the very top of cabinets, we put it on top of the cabinets and we can get it down without a step stool. But like I know that's not possible for everybody, but you also don't need everything every day. So yeah, if you have a step stool to get the thing one time for Thanksgiving dinner, understandable. But when you're going up every time to get a plate and a cup, it just puts you at such higher risk for a fall when you could
mhm.
consider reorganizing the way you put things and not have to do it that way.
Yeah, same thing, and I would add to that, also, bending down to get things out of low
True.
cabinets can also be a falling hazard, especially for folks, again, who might have limited mobility, maybe they have back problems, maybe they have knee problems, they're not able to, like, safely squat down to get things.
Blood pressure
The idea
problems?
is just that blood pressure problems, yeah, absolutely. So, think about the things that you actually need and use all the time, and you kinda wanna keep them at, like, a countertop or
Mm-hmm.
shoulder height level if you possibly can. Because and then those things that you don't use all the time, like I said, those are the things that go in the harder to access areas. Also, things that are really heavy, you know,
Yes.
you don't wanna be lifting things from overhead that are really heavy. It doesn't matter who you are, that's, like, a risk of 1, you could just drop it on your face, and that sucks. But also
And in my mind, I'm picturing
oh,
a
more
cast iron skillet.
that's what I'm picturing as well. I'm picturing, like, a big, like, Le Creuset, like, stock pot, just, like, or yeah, cast iron, Dutch oven, just like, I mean, that would really be terrible. Um but but beyond that, what's more likely to happen is it actually just puts you at risk for shoulder
Yeah.
injury no matter who you
Mm-hmm.
are. It's a really easy way to hurt your shoulders, and that is no fun. Because if your shoulders are hurt, that significantly limits your ability to function. So just thinking about, how heavy are things? How often do you use them? What is the safest way to actually access all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff? And if it's stuff that you use every day, just keep it where you don't have to bend down or reach up overhead to get it. It is so helpful to do. And if you're someone who, like you said, for Thanksgiving, you might need to get out of that other stuff, have someone help you
Yeah.
get that stuff out. There's no reason to ruin Thanksgiving by breaking a hip or an arm or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Or just, the sheer embarrassment of falling down in front of your family kind of sucks
Yeah.
too. If you've ever been there, I have. So, just getting assistance and getting assistance to do that rearranging.
Mhm.
If you are someone who if you're listening to this and you're thinking, maybe like it's not that easy for me to reach overhead, or I have a range of motion, I have some issues reaching with my shoulder. It doesn't go that far, or I feel like I'm going to tip, or maybe I have vertigo or whatever it
Mhm.
is. Don't do it on your own. Have someone come and help you do that rearranging so that you're not at risk during that process.
Absolutely.
Hey there, it's Amelia. Listen, I am so thrilled to have a great resource like Ask Sammy as part of the Care Lab team, and here's why. It's a game changer for aging in place because it makes it so simple. All you do is ask. Just type in your question or even tell Sammy what the problem is and get tailored solutions. Everything from innovative adaptive equipment to comprehensive resources. It's a great way to become more empowered, to live more independently, and to live with greater confidence. And my favorite thing about how Ask Sammy works is it's deeply rooted in dignity and practicality. So, whether you're a fellow therapist, a care partner, or someone who's seeking solutions for themselves, visit www.asksammy.com. We're going to link it in the show notes so you can find it there. Start making home more accessible today. Now, back to the show. What's your third?
My third thing that we should change for fall prevention in the kitchen is I think I'm going to go with how you access the things in your refrigerator. This is similar
Mm,
to what you said about, I was saying, don't reach up high, climb up on things. And you're like, well, you also shouldn't be bending too low and like getting your head down too low. And so sometimes if you're a kind of person who has a full fridge, and stuff gets pushed to the back, you're bending over, reaching forward into the refrigerator, trying not to break other things and pull other things out. So you're in a precarious situation. And that presents a fall hazard and also just like a high level of energy being used. And so some other ways to
hmm
think about that are reconsidering how you use your door space. I don't know about you, my door is full of jars, and those are not really the
Yeah.
things I use the most often. That's just like the place we put them. And so you could put
hmm
things that you use more often there so that you have more easier access instead of reaching to the back of the fridge. And then also consider like fridge bins, which is like sitting a long Tupperware, I'm going to call it, a long plastic box
Yeah.
on the shelf so
Yeah.
that you can pull that out, maybe set it on the counter where you're in a standing up position, get what you need, and then put the whole thing back instead of digging in the refrigerator again, trying to get to that. It also works really good if you need to sit to access the refrigerator. Maybe you're in a wheelchair or you just don't have the tolerance for standing up for a long time.
I also just love those bins, like from an organizational perspective. It helps make you sure, because otherwise, like, I don't know about the back of your refrigerator, but there are some terrifying things in the back of my refrigerator.
Yes.
Um, and so unless you're like going through and cleaning out your fridge every week, which like I'll admit I'm not having in places where I use those bins that pull out, I actually know what I have. So more of that food gets eaten
Mm-hmm.
instead of going bad.
Mm-hmm.
And it saves me money because I'm not buying the same thing over and over again because I don't have
Yep.
it. And, like, it's just a good overall, like, organizational solution so that so you know what you have, it gets used, and you don't buy the same thing over and over
Totally.
again. It makes it does make it easier to clean the fridge too because you pull out the drawer, and then you can just wipe everything down.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you're like a clidge, you know what I'm
I don't at
saying.
all know what you're saying.
Fridge.
A
I was
clean
trying to
fridge?
combine the word clean and fridge, but it came out as
Okay.
klidge. If you like a klidge, which means hashtag
Oh my
klidge,
gosh. Do not hashtag glitch anything.
we don't do that. No, that's terrible. That's terrible. My kids are deeply embarrassed right now. Okay. The other thing that I was gonna say about fridges is, this is a tip that I'll often give for folks who have Parkinson's
Okay.
disease, but really and truly anyone who has, trouble with walking, trouble with mobility, and sometimes even if you're accessing a fridge, like, from a wheelchair level or something, if you actually stand to the side of that door while you open it instead of behind it, it makes it so you don't have to step backwards
Mm-hmm.
when you're opening the fridge. And that's a really big reason, again, that particularly folks with Parkinson's disease will fall in the kitchen, is because they can't react quickly enough as the door is opening. And then as they start to step backwards, they cannot stop their movement quickly enough. So they'll end up falling backwards because of kind of the um the
Yeah.
momentum of the movement essentially. So it's really easy to solve that problem just by standing like to the side of the door and opening it instead of standing like right in front of it where you have to step
Mhm.
back. So that's kind of a good one that I always like to share when it comes to fridges. And same thing for thinking about, opening your oven, depending on how your oven works, how your dishwasher works, all that kind of
Yep.
stuff. Okay, so the fourth thing that I would add is really about what our behavior is like
Mhm.
in the
Okay.
kitchen. So do we close all the cabinets and all the drawers when we're not using them? Or do we leave some open? For the dishwasher, if you've got a dishwasher, do you leave that dishwasher door down and open or are you closing it every time? And the reason that's a big deal is because if you have someone in the house, or maybe even you, I think we've probably all run into the open dishwasher before.
Yes.
It hurts. Um, it's a simple thing to do to close those things up so that no one runs into them and trips over them. Again, especially if you have someone in the house who maybe they have a visual
Mhm.
impairment, they're not going to see that, or their field of vision is not complete. They're not seeing one side of the world. Maybe they don't see the bottom of the world. Frequently, folks with dementia kind of get sort of tunnel vision in their visual field, so they're really not notice things out in the periphery. They're only seeing sort of what's right there in front of them. So it's really easy for folks in that situation to trip over things that aren't right there in their visual field of focus. So just getting in the simple habit of closing the cabinets, closing the drawers, closing the dishwashers, not leaving that stuff open where someone, maybe yourself or maybe someone else could easily just tumble over it and have kind of a nasty fall. Because falls in the kitchen, we think about falls in the bathroom being bad, and they really can be. Falls in the kitchen can be pretty nasty too. We've got hard
Yep.
surfaces, we've got countertops, there are appliances, there are lots of corners around in there. It's definitely not a nice place to
Mm-mm.
fall. So, that's kind of an easy one. It doesn't cost you any money. It's just about like noticing your own behavior and saying, could I do this in a way that would be a little safer for
You
everyone?
wanna hear something very horrible?
Yeah.
This is a very
Yeah.
convicting because if I let my family hear this, they're gonna be like, "Who you are the pot calling the kettle black?" Like, so, like, my pantry door is one of those I don't think called bifold doors so that it kinda
Yeah, yeah.
accordions against itself, and this is a horrible design also, whoever built my house, but
I hate those bifold doors. They're just like always in the way no matter where they are.
exactly, and this
I feel
door
like.
is when you fold it open, it's right in the doorway opening of going out the kitchen, and so it's taking
Ah,
away your doorway ain't that big. My door is not that big going out from the kitchen to the dining room, and so my husband's a big guy. He's like always hitting it as he goes through the door, and I stand right there because the stove is right across from there. So like I'm always in there, and I hate closing the
uh-huh.
thing every time. So I just because I'm still cooking.
'Cause they're a pain to close.
Yeah,
Those they're yeah, they're like always get caught. It's never smooth. Anyway,
exactly,
sorry, go ahead.
exactly. And I'm just standing right there. So I'm like getting spices, getting stuff, and it's just like right in my arm's length, but it's also right in the doorway. And so he's always like, shut the
Uh-huh.
door. And then I go to my parents' house and cook every Sunday. We all have family dinner there. But my dad has low vision. And I have this horrible habit of keeping cabinet doors open until I'm all the way done cooking. And so he's coming through the doorway and hitting the cabinet. He's like, why you got these doors open? I'm hitting myself with them because he doesn't see them as quickly or as easily as we do. And so that's why this section of this podcast shall never be heard by anybody.
I don't know that that's true, but we can pretend like it is
I'm
for
gonna
for
pretend
sure.
like it
Yeah.
is.
Okay, right, yeah. I mean, the fact is, do you ever go back and listen to stuff after it's already done?
No,
Like, after it's done and dusted?
no. Do I go back and
I
listen
don't.
to any of the things like in interviews?
Listen or, like, watch or anything?
Not listens because usually they're longer. Maybe I would
Yeah.
watch something with somebody. Like if my mom wanted to see something I did, I might watch it with her, but
Mm,
I don't
mm.
watch it myself.
Yeah. No, I don't, like, once it's done and posted, it's dead to
It's
me almost. I just
You're like, oh yeah, that is
I
me. I
just
did do
can't.
that.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, I'm that'd be interesting. Do I remember all of the things that I've done? Not sure. Not sure about that. I do take a lot of notes to keep me on track for just getting my day-to-day life together. But yeah, no, it's like, I don't know. I don't know why I would, I guess.
You already
I
said it.
already did it. I was
You
there.
were there, it came out of your brain.
And, like, however I sound is however I sound. I can't change that. So I'd prefer not to overly engage, uh, with that.
Care Lab listener, I have a question for you. If someone you love was going to hire a caregiver, what qualities would you want that caregiver to have? You probably want them to be reliable, trustworthy, kind maybe, just a generally dependable good person, right? Second question, would you also want them to be trained? I'm going to guess the answer is an emphatic yes. Okay, third and final question for you. Do you think it matters who provides that training? Like, is it cool if it's just anybody? Or would you want that person providing the training to be a qualified expert? Assuming you do, in fact, love this person that needs a caregiver, you probably want the expert, right? Well, that's what Higher Standards Caregiver Training does. Higher Standards Caregiver Training provides 100% occupational therapist-led training for caregivers. Caregivers get taught everything from gold standard foundational skills for transfers and activities of daily living, all the way up to how to deal with specific diseases, injuries, and illnesses. And most importantly, they are taught these things in a practical way that enhances the participation of the person being cared for. And it protects the safety of everybody involved. Why? Because everybody deserves a higher standard. Find a course for individuals or learn about training for care organizations at higherstandardscaregivertraining.com.
So, anything else that you would add? A lot of this is like pretty simple, straightforward stuff actually that people can do to make their kitchen savers. Is there anything that you would add to it?
I think this is good for the simple stuff. And that's the stuff that I like to stick with because that's the thing that's the most actionable. But if you are in the
Yeah.
situation in which you are going to remodel or you're thinking about changing your kitchen, and you don't have to be like 85 to be doing this, like you probably remodeling in your 40s or something. And that might be the kitchen you have for the next 25 years. And so some things to think about are glare. Like
Mm.
we like the look of these high sheen white marble kind of countertops. And that's cool. That's it. If that's what you want it to look like. But you also need to be thoughtful about like when the sun comes in the window or when the light is on, is there a big glare blazing off of that? That might not be problematic for your 40-year-old eyes, but it can certainly be problematic for your 60 and 80-year-old eyes. And so, like one good example is like, when you go outside and it's a sunny day and it was kind of dark inside your house and you kind of like everything's washed out for a little while until your eyes dilate and
Mhm.
adjust. And the same thing happens when you come inside from sunny to that can be happening in your kitchen. And our speed at which our eyes adjust for that as we get older decreases significantly. So like it gets like 3 times worse. Just automatically, no eye problem, just like this is what happens as our eyes age. And so that could be problematic if you walk into your kitchen and you really can't see it very well, which means maybe there's something
Mhm.
left on the floor that you don't see. And now you step on that and now we have a fall. Sometimes I feel like when I say these things, it feels like if this, then this, then this, then this. And it sounds like, that's highly unlikely. But this is stuff that I've seen in real
Mhm.
life that has happened to more than one person. And, you
Yeah.
know, prevention is such a hard thing because as human beings, we don't see the risk factor very well because it's not ever present. And like the rug in your kitchen, you ain't never tripped over before and you've had it there for the last 5 years. What's to say that you're going to trip
Uh-huh.
over tomorrow? But you only need to trip over once and fall to have a hip fracture, right? You only want to do that
Yeah.
0 times, but only one if you need it. You know what I mean? So like it's just
Yeah.
sometimes hard to feel the sense of urgency unless you've seen it happen.
Yeah, I think even sometimes it can be difficult for people even after they've had a
Yeah.
fall to still to have a sense of urgency to take action. I can't tell you how many times, and I am positive that you've had this conversation probably a few thousand times as well, where I've walked in to the hospital or rehab or wherever, and I'm literally treating someone who's there because they had a
Uh-huh.
fall. That is the reason for the admission, and I'll start to talk to them about, the falls they've had at home and some ways that they can prevent falls in the future, maybe make some recommendations, and they'll stop me and say, "No, don't worry about it. I'm not going to fall." And one, I won't point out the obvious that that is in fact
Why we are
why you
here.
are here. Actually, what I say, this is what I say every single time. I say, "Listen, I have worked with so many people, more than I can count, who I've treated because they've had falls, and not a single one of them has planned on that.
Facts.
We don't plan to have these things
No.
happen, you know? You don't plan to get in a car accident, but you wear your seatbelt,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And you have insurance because you know it's something that could happen. And we kind of need to start thinking about our home safety in the same way as well. But I think something else, like talking about, and I think your example of like vision and glare is a really good example that also has to do with like the functionality of the kitchen
Yeah.
too, because if you are blinded by your countertops in the kitchen, that also means that you can't prepare any food there.
Mhm.
You know, you can't sit at the countertop to eat. You can't actually function in that
Mhm.
space if it's too uncomfortable because there's glare to function, or if you frankly you just can't see anything because there's glare. And so like that renders the space not just unsafe, but basically
Mhm.
unusable for someone. And like you almost cannot overstate how devastating something that seems as simple as glare can be
Mhm.
to someone, but it can really really prevent someone being able to utilize a space or to move through a space. So it's definitely worth considering. That and like I think contrast
Oh yeah.
is super
Oh yeah.
important too, for like long-term vision accessibility, but also just for fall prevention. Because if you don't see that there's a difference, you know,
Yeah.
then it's easy to trip over stuff.
Mhm.
How do you feel about this? Is something that I generally recommend if people are in a situation where they're remodeling, they're replacing floors, they're redoing the kitchen.
Sure.
I love, when there is no flooring surface change between the kitchen and the rest of the house, or essentially, because you know, a lot of times people want to put tile down in the kitchen because it can get
Mhm.
wet,
Mhm.
right? But then you end up with that like threshold
Mhm.
there between the flooring surface of the
Mhm.
kitchen and the flooring surface of the rest of the house. And that is just like such a tripping hazard. Also, it's really hard to get in there with a wheelchair or a walker if you have those little transitional thresholds too. Um, what do you think about that?
I feel like going through thresholds is definitely a trip hazard and can be a problem. But I also feel like it's kind of hard to match your kitchen floor to the rest of the floor types in your house depending on what's going on. Because like if you've got like a
Yeah.
one of those click-in floating floors, they look nice and you could do that in the kitchen too, but they're not going to stand up to the water that you're probably going to get, you know. And I definitely don't want carpet in my kitchen, so I
Mm,
feel like it's inevitable that you're going to have a change. But the thing you can do though is make sure that that threshold is as low to the floor as possible and also significantly different looking than both surfaces. So that doesn't have to mean it looks bad. It just means like if you've got a brown wood floor on one end and a cream or white floor in the kitchen, then you put a gold threshold on it so like it stands out so that you it's clear that you are walking into a different space, and that it is theoretically a trip hazard.
The other thing you can do too is you can ask your builder or your contractor to put in a flush threshold for that
Mm-hmm.
transition. That's also something that's totally possible. It basically just takes a little bit more attention to that detail there, because the purpose of putting in that little like threshold thing is because where the two flooring surfaces meets, it's not clean and
Mm-hmm.
pretty. That's why they put that in there. If time is taken to make those two edges nice and clean and pretty, then you can have a zero threshold flooring change. Like I made sure to have that when we did some work on our house. I made sure to have the contractor put in zero threshold transitions everywhere just because I was like, I don't know.
You don't
I
know.
mean, I don't know. And also, like, you know, Brandy and I live in this world where we see this stuff actually happen all the
Yeah.
time. So it's kind of ever present to us in a way that it might not necessarily be to other folks. So my builder did think that I was crazy for being concerned about that. I won't lie. But my thresholds are beautiful and they're
And they're
flush.
flush.
So,
Do you look at you and be like, why do you need to do this? Or like this is gonna cost you extra?
oh yeah, I wanted to have a curbless
Uh
shower
huh.
put in as well, and they were like, "Yeah, cool, that's fine." I do think that they thought I was a little bit crazy. But then I will tell you I was pretty upset about this. They didn't actually do it when they created the shower pan for that bathroom. And when I went in and saw, I was like, "This isn't correct." It was so far along in the process that it couldn't be reversed in a reasonable way at that point. So I was like, "Come on, man. This was like my one."
2.
I had very few asks
You asked
actually.
for the
Okay,
thresholds,
this
so
is my
don't, you know.
my that and I asked for all the doorways to make sure to be like extra wide also.
That's actually really
Um
important. Not that the curb shower is not, but
it's
like
yeah.
that solves a lot of problems.
Yeah, and then even so, like, we did a real heavy remodel, several years ago, and even then I was like, so we don't have any bedrooms downstairs. We have, like, we have a technical bedroom, we don't use it for that, but it is downstairs, and next to it is, like, a pantry and the powder
Mhm.
room. And even that I was thinking, okay, in the basic configuration of the house, when we were talking with the contractors, like, this needs to be set up so that if we had to have someone live
Yep.
downstairs, if the stairs were not an option, this could be reconfigured into the pantry and the back, and this and this and this could all be reconfigured into a singular space that would be an accessible
Yeah, yeah,
bathroom
yeah.
for someone off of this other room here. And I just think that, like, whether I need it or not, I have that peace of mind to know that without a too insane level of expense, redoing a bathroom is pretty expensive, but like if I needed to stay in my house after something happened where we had to have that space accessible for a wheelchair, we could do
Yeah.
that. And that gives me a lot of peace of mind just to know that like planning is there in place. Even if it's not perfect
Mhm.
right now, it's there and it's available. And I think that that's another way of looking at this stuff too, is like, if you are going to spend all the money, if you are going to do all this stuff, it's easiest if you just make it so it's accessible for everyone,
Yeah,
whether you need it or a visitor needs it, right?
totally.
Um, but if you can't do it exactly that way now, make sure that there's a plan in place for how you could,
Mhm.
you know.
I think that's the thing that we don't do well as humans is think future tense in that and like all the opportunities and ways. Because if you're already tearing up stuff and putting in new stuff, this is the perfect time to add some.
Mhm.
Maybe you don't want to call it accessibility, call it universal design. Because if it's
Yeah.
easier for somebody who's in a wheelchair or somebody who has mobility problems, it's also easier for kids. And it's also easier for somebody who might want to visit you, and you might want them to,
Mhm.
you invited such and such to come over and they never do. Well, maybe it's because they feel like they can't get in on their own. They don't want to think they have to ask you for help, and they just say no anyway. I've known many a person who stopped
Yeah.
having social interaction because they just didn't know what they'd encounter in these other environments and didn't feel confident about it, and also didn't want to tell their friends that. And so
Mhm.
visibility is a whole thing. And like in my experience, you can tell me how your parents treat you, but like everybody who has grandchildren no longer cares about their kids. They only care about their grandchildren. And so what I tell people who I work with who are typically grandparents is like, oh, this microwave being on the counter instead of above the stove. No, this is not for you. This is so your grandkids can come in and warm some food up whenever they get ready. You don't have to try to come down here and fix it for them. Oh, yeah, we're definitely going to do that. But if I say, this is for you to reach it easier, then it's like, oh, I don't like stuff on my counter and it takes up some of my space. Blah, blah, blah. As soon as I say it's for the grandkids, totally different ballgame.
That's actually a really, really good tip, because you're right. These recommendations are they're for everyone, actually.
Yeah.
It just makes life easier for everyone, and I'm a huge fan of making things easier to access for kids so that they can be more independent
Yep.
earlier on. One, because it has made my life way easier as a mother
Facts.
to make it so that my kids can help themselves, but also like it teaches them self-confidence to know that, like, I have this ability, I can do this independently, I can do this safely. Having that internal confidence that, like, yes, I can, I think is a really big
Yeah.
deal for kids. Can I tell you, I know one person that this would not work on,
Who?
my mother-in-law. Because she doesn't want. She does not want, and she would be fine with me saying this because she knows it's true. She does not want anyone to touch anything in her kitchen.
Especially not no little
I'm
kids.
like, especially not, no, it doesn't matter. No, it's just, I'm like, can I help with something? She's like, no, I got it. Can I help do the, what can I help you with? Can I help with these dishes? Just leave them. Just leave it. She just does not want anyone to touch her stuff. She didn't want anyone to touch her stuff. And it is like, yeah, and she's got a lot of stuff. So
There's no universal design going on there. There's only her design.
there's,
This is for you.
it is her design. And you know what? I don't say anything.
Listen, that's her castle.
That is her castle. It is not mine. And if ever recommendations are requested, I will be happy to give them. But until that time, I will sit on my hands and not help with the dishes.
Man.
Although I would be happy to. All right. I feel like anything else you want to add to this topic? I think we've gone through some good stuff here for people to think
Yeah,
through.
especially because kitchens are not usually like the top priority thing that we talk about in a
Mhm.
more acute or emergent situation, right? It's always bathrooms and bedrooms and getting in and out of the house.
Mhm.
So hopefully it's a good resource. But I think we covered the stuff that's the most important.
Yeah, agree. All right. Well, guys, if you enjoyed this episode, if you like Care Lab, if you have any questions, definitely make sure that you leave a comment. We'd be happy to address anything that we possibly can. Also, please make sure that you are liking and subscribing to the podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel so that we can keep making these episodes for you and bring you more valuable content. All right, guys. Next time.
Peace.
Bye.